want to start by just sort of setting the stage for, I think it's sort of a good reminder that we go through this space again in terms of what the college is and what we provide. And the annual meeting, as I said, is one of the most direct opportunities we have to connect with all of you as registrants. As social workers and social service workers, you are the professionals who work with this college that exists, that the college really exists to support, is the work that you do out in the communities. Today's session has been shaped in large part by you, and Haley mentioned this as well. And the questions we received from registrants allow us to determine where there's some uncertainty, where there's some gaps in our standards, and where we can sort of clarify and make those standards relevant to the work that you do. Today, during the question and answer period, we'll be covering the college's mandate, how it relates to the work of the professional, and how it relates to professional associations, our registration fee structure, the legislative framework that we govern, our commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion as a core part of the work that we do, as well as some other additional topics that have come up related to employee engagement, how to work with the college and participate. So we'll go through those today with you. So when we talk about our mandate primarily is to protect the public and promote ethical, competent professional practice. Registration with the college is a legal requirement to hold the title of social work and social service work. That requirement exists to protect the people and the communities that all of you as registrants serve. Supporting you in your practice is a meaningful part of our mandate at the college. So when we think about supporting your practice, we often want to make sure you understand the host of resources that we offer. So we have this event that we're holding, AHMED, as well as practice notes, practice guidelines, articles in perspective, and our registrant publications that are designed to help you navigate through any of these complex situations that you may encounter as you're providing care. We know that your time is valuable. We know that you're coming in and out of interactions with clients on a daily basis. We know that sometimes translating the standards may not be as easy as it is when we've presented it as the principles of practice. So we want to be able to guide you and provide you those tools so that you can take the standards and make them relevant in your day-to-day work, because it doesn't translate exactly the same every single time, and it can be developed for each of your context of practice. And hopefully throughout the day when you hear each of the sessions, you'll be able to really connect the dots and see where it fits to your own spaces. So, where possible, I really do encourage you to take a look at our website, review these guidelines, and make use of these tools. So we get this question a lot. What's the difference between the college and the association? So we want to really speak through what the distinction is between the association and the college. So as I stated earlier, the college's mandate is public protection, not professional advocacy. The distinction is principled and not incidental. So regulators and associations, they serve different but complementary functions. So we work together, but we each have our own separate mandate. Professional associations such as the Ontario Association of Social Workers and the Ontario Social Service Workers Association exist to advocate for the values, interests, and concerns of their members and the professions they represent. Membership in the association is voluntary, and the work that they do is important. And we often work with them collaboratively as well. Advocacy with employers and government on issues such as wages, workload, staffing shortages, burnout, and workplace conditions falls within the association's mandate, not the college's. So I think that distinction is important to remember. Similarly, career support, job postings are services that the associations are well positioned to offer. So again, I urge you to take a look at your specific associations, see what tools they have to offer as well. The college's focus is the standards, conduct, and competence of the registered practitioner, and always with the interest of public protection in mind. So when we think about why we move forward, why we make the decisions we make, what the guidelines are built around, it's always with the interest of the public. So that focus is what makes both the college and the association effective in their respective roles. And as I said, at times there are really opportunities for us to come together and work collaboratively. But as registrants, it's important for you all to sort of understand where the college's mandate fits and where each of your associations fit. I also want to speak about our commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, not as a separate initiative, but as something that's embedded in what it means for this college to protect the public. So it should and is embedded in everything that we do. Our commitment to equity and diversity and inclusion is a fundamental part of our public protection mandate. It is embedded in all the work that we do. And this commitment relates to our role in safeguarding clients and communities by ensuring fair, equitable standards of care and treatment for all. You can read our commitment statements on our website as well. It's important to remember that there's limitations of where the college can come in. So in today's society, we continue to see structural and systemic issues that extend far beyond the college and its mandate and sometimes capabilities. So meaningful solutions require us to have efforts in parts of many groups, including regulators, associations, social work and social service work programs, accreditation bodies, employers, and others. So where possible, we want to interact with each of you. We want to interact with all of these spaces that all have similar mandates in order to move our commitment to EDI. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. As we move forward. Next, I want to take us through the fees questions. I know these are big topics that we're jumping in between, but where I'm trying to make sure we're answering all of your questions. Fees questions come up quite often. And we receive these, we think, this really does reflect something real that's out there in the registrant group. We appreciate that the financial pressure that many of you may feel, especially towards the end of the year, is very real, and we want to make sure we address that. So some things to keep in mind is that the college's fee structure is established under our Act and within our bylaws. So they're clearly articulated, and since you heard earlier, our bylaws are now on our website. You can access them at any time, and the fee structures are written out in there. This is an important context for some of the questions that we've received, because a number of items that the registrants have asked about is not within the college's authority to change. So the legislation that we're governed under is under the Ministry of Community and Children's Services, MCCSS, and the renewal fee amounts and the annual fee deadlines are written through the bylaws. So the renewal fee amounts and the annual fee deadline is on December 31st, and there's no separate category for social work and social service work. So it's a single fee for both professions. We have a deadline of December 31st, but within bylaw, we give a contingency period of an additional 30 days. Now, this I'm going to go off script a little bit for this part, because this is very important to me, because there is this time period where we open our renewal period, which is in November. We ask people where possible to renew by December 31st, and then there's an additional 30 days until end of January before the late fee checks in. We actually don't want any of you to pay a late fee. We want to have you renew within the time period that's allotted. So I understand life becomes busy and sometimes people miss that period of time. So then we have the late fee kick in February, and we run for another 30 days before suspension notices start to roll out. So it's very important that each of you as registrants and wanting to be in good standing, set up a structure for yourself so that you're able to renew within that renewal period. And we are bound by our bylaws and bound by our legislation, so there's not a lot of grace that we have within that time frame that's provided. And another important note to keep in mind, if you find yourself in a space where your current registration class doesn't fit the work you're doing, so you are taking a leave of absence, or there's a period of time where you won't be working, but you still want to hold on to your title of social work, you may want to go to inactive class, and this comes up frequently. What's important to keep in mind is if you are leaving general class, which allows you to practice as you will, And moving into an inactive class, you cannot practice within the profession. You cannot use your social work or social service work title and practice. Inactive means you're coming to an agreement with the college to state that you will not be practicing within that class. Some individuals want to go into a retirement class. They've decided they want to retire. They want to keep, so then you can move from general to a retired class as well. But what's important to keep in mind is in order to practice social work and social service work, you must be in a general class of registration. Let me take a look at my notes to make sure I hit all of the questions. Perfect. Another interesting question that came up was around the Regulated Health Practitioners Act. The Regulated Health Professions Act. I always switch the P's out. For any of you that are unaware of what the RHPA is, one of the questions that came up is, can the college move under the RHPA? So the RHPA is the act that governs the professions that are under the Ministry of Health. So nurses, physios, doctors, occupational therapists, there's a list of 26 that fall under the RHPA. Our college, social workers and social service workers, fall under MCCSS. You heard Minister Parsa gave a note there when we started our meeting as well. And this is a fair question, and the quick, simple answer is that no, we would not be moving into the RHPA. We are under our own act, and this was a very deliberate choice created and a distinction created for us as the two professions. Now, there are overlaps and connection points between the RHPA and our current act, and those are worth reviewing. The Controlled Act of Psychotherapy is called out in the RHPA, and our college or our regulatory body is able to provide that controlled act. So there's those connection points within the RHPA. This not being part of the RHPA doesn't diminish the standing of social workers and social service workers as a regulated professional by any means. You're still practicing within a legislation. You're still a regulated professional. You're working in collaborative practice with other health practitioners, and that is as it should be. What's important is that we remember that there's a weight and a standing that carries with being registered professional. And whether you're part of the RHPA or you're part of our college, OC, SW, which is one thing we wish they did change, was the acronym is quite long. After 5 years, you think I'm not tripping over it, but I still am. So I imagine what everyone else is. You're still a regulated practitioner and you're a regulated professional. And that's something that's important to keep in mind. If you find yourself in a situation where your employer or colleague are treating you differently because you're not under the RHPA, this is a workplace issue, and I do recommend you have it addressed. Because there really is, the distinction should not be any different, regardless of which act you fall under. But it was a great question, and certainly one that has not come up year over year, so thank you for that. In terms of employer resources, the college's relationship with employers matters not only for registrants, but for clients and communities that the employers serve. As I said earlier, when we're talking about a collaborative practice and what's really within the scope and abilities of the college, we have to work with other agencies, key partners, in order to meet our mandate of public protections. And employers are a big part of that. If your employers have any questions, including confusion about the difference in scopes of practice between a social worker or a social service worker, they can contact Professional Practice for information or look at our website. We have great information on our website. We also encourage you share with your employers details about our quarterly publications for employers. The employer communique is something that the college puts out. It's a direct means of us as a regulatory body speaking to the employers. And the more we're able to share that with the employer groups, the richer our communication can become as well. So they can sign up for free. We encourage that all employers stay up to date on this information. And again, that information is on our website and the signups on our website. This was another interesting question that we received about the ability of the college to add a clinical social work category to registration. And just to kind of define clinical social work, this is the expansion of the social worker's scope of practice to include diagnosing mental health disorders and as a separate class of registration. So if you remember previously, we have 3 classes of registration: general class, which allows you to do all of your work within your scope; inactive, for a period of time if you need to step away from practice but you don't want to give up your registration, that's inactive; and then retired, if you're wanting to hold your title but you're not actually working within practice, but you want to hold on to and present yourself as a social worker or social service worker, that's the retired class. This question is asking if an additional class can be added. In order to add a class of registration, we have to open up the regulation, and that's not something that's within the college's independent ability. So the ministry has the ability to open up the act and open up regulations. And I understand that sometimes associations will want to ask for this type of change to occur. And I believe there's some discussion around expanding scopes of practice that's happening right now. But what's important to take away is that the college can independently request this change. Some of the changes that the college would ask is specific to public protection and modernizing the act. So the short answer is yes, it can be done, but it cannot be done independently by the college. But it is important to note this clinical designation does exist nationally in some of the other provinces. So potentially, as time moves on, it is possible a designation like this can come forward, but it wouldn't be something that's up to the college independently. We also received questions about the parameters around new practitioners entering private practice. And this, again, is another space where I want to spend a little bit of time speaking through. The manner by which the college is set up in Ontario, separate from how it is in some of the other provinces, where entry to practice actually has supervision, sometimes exams associated with it. In Ontario, when you graduate out of school, whether you're coming out as a social worker or a social service worker, you can register with the college and start practice. Now, as I stated earlier, psychotherapy is a controlled act that's available to our registrants within our college to practice. However, it's important to keep in mind psychotherapy should not be an entry to practice a scope. So in an ideal world, if there were regulations set up, there would be a space by which an individual who has graduated is able to build out their practice and learn the practice of social work or social service work prior to engaging in a distinct practice like psychotherapy or private practice. At present, we are aware there's a number of individuals that sort of come out of school and go immediately into these scopes of practice that may be beyond their ability as a new graduate. So it's very important that we set the stage for the fact that as a regulator, we do not recommend that you go into psychotherapy or private practice immediately out of school. From a public protection standpoint, absolutely, you need to have that exposure and time and mentorship and supervision to create a scope of practice before you move into this independent practice. But also from a personal perspective of you as a registrant, there's a liability when you move into private practice immediately. And I really urge any of you that find yourself in this space to make sure that you have what you need to practice independently. Do you have the appropriate liability protection? Are you set up well in terms of providing care? Because you're not protected by an umbrella of an organization when you're in private practice. And we'll speak through this a bit more in some of the interactions you have with the college as you move forward. But it is important to understand that at this point in time, the knowledge, skill, and judgment required to practice in a sound, ethical, competent manner are really what's assigned beyond an immediate graduate level. So we really want you to think long and hard and make sure you have the right connections before you're moving into independent practice or psychotherapy. We have a great education session this afternoon on this topic. I hope that many of you will sit back if this is interesting to you to review it. We have practice notes around the practice of psychotherapy and private practice that we'd like you to review. And over the next few months into the year, we're going to be communicating with the registrant group a lot more as well, along with new graduates, just to make sure you're aware of what the risks are and that you're appropriately prepared. Because if you do come into practice too early, you find yourself in trouble because you went into private practice. It doesn't benefit anybody. It doesn't benefit you as a practitioner. It doesn't benefit the public we serve. And potentially we're taking a great practitioner that has great potential out of practice too early. So we really just want you to make sure you're understanding the parameters of your practice before you engage in it, potentially too early. And I think I addressed some of that as well. And finally, we also received a question around how to become a non-council committee member. So just to set the stage, we have council members, elected council members that run according to their district on an every 3-year basis. And we have who participate in the governing body of the college. Now, there's another way to participate with the college, which is as a non-council committee member. So we have a number of committees, and if you're interested in sitting on these committees, we open up for applications on June 22nd to July 13th. So just keep that in mind and take a look at our website. That'll have the committees listed that you can participate in. As a non-council committee member, what you'd be doing is entering into some of our specific committees like standards of practice, EDI committee, elections. No, maybe not elections. It's a collections. I'm looking at some of our staff who are nodding at me. Should have prepped with notes for that. But a number of other committees that you can sit through. Complaints. And there are the great opportunities to see what the work is like, see if you enjoy the work, and then if you're interested in the work that we do at the college, maybe run for election when your district comes up. So we see it sort of as a soft launch as well coming into council. So we really encourage you to check out the postings when they're posted, which would be coming in a couple of weeks, and submit your interest. And I think that might bring us to the end of my presentation of now these are the questions that were provided to us ahead of time. And I believe Haley's ready with some questions that may be coming forward through our chat, which may be for me or our auditor or our chair.
Yes. I'm going to do the first couple to you, definitely.
Okay.
We've been getting a lot of questions and comments, and hoping you can just reiterate about the fact that we aren't able to change the timing of the renewal fee or the lack of a monthly installment. If you could just sort of reiterate that,
Yes.
Explain that a little bit more, that would be great.
Yes. So unfortunately, the renewal fees are set by structure from the Act to the regulations to our bylaws, and that timing can't be changed. We also can't be on an installment process, but I think that doesn't limit anyone through their own financing to set up an installment process, as long as you're meeting the time period by which the renewals open. So, renewal fees exist, as I spoke about the RHPA. Renewals fees exist for all of the 26 colleges that are under the RHPA, similar to the college, our college here. Everyone's expected to renew within that calendar year in a similar way. Some colleges are a lot more stricter than other colleges. We actually give you that extra 30-day window as well to ensure that you're able to meet your renewal deadlines. It's very important that you have a license in good standing, because that's what tells your employers and that's what tells the public that you can practice this great profession. And that's really what the member in good standing and the fee structure works towards. So we really want to make sure that you set yourself up so that you're not being suspended for non-payment, that you're not incurring late fees, and kind of address the renewal between the soft launch in early November to end of January where there's no fees. I know that there's a part of the population that watches our renewal period, because we open up our renewal. When I say soft launch, we actually turn on the switch for our renewal without making any announcements whatsoever in and around early November. We sort of pick the date based on what's happening with the database and where our staffing's at. And just internally, it's a bit of a game that we play to see who the most eager individual is that goes in and renews at 12:02 when the switch was turned on. So I do know that there is a group out there that are very diligent, and I thank you for it. But that is our 60-day window when we open up our renewals.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask a question that came in through for Ruthie, actually, if that's okay. If Ruthie, you want to come up. So the question is about whether the college publishes the nature of the investments they are engaged in, such as mutual funds, stocks, and bonds. And they're curious if the college invests their money in an ethical and sustainable manner, not investing in oil and gas and weapons manufacturing, etc.
Thank you for the question. So in the summary financial statements, it is not disclosed the nature of the various investment types. There is a full set of audited financial statements which do have a breakdown of the various components that make up the investments. And I'll turn it over to Denitha for the second portion of the question.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ruthie. One of the committees that we have at the college is the Finance and Audit Committee, which spends a great deal of time reviewing the investment policy, so the policy by which these investments are made, as well as the types of investments that we place our money in. And we invest in environmentally sustainable investments. So we do not invest in any of the items that are listed. Our Finance and Audit Committee meets quarterly and reviews the college's investments to ensure that they stay true to the policy and to the principles of the college's investments. What's important to also to keep in mind is the investments that we have set aside are meant for those unforeseen spaces of discipline hearing that might be quite costly. So this makes up the reserve that the college can use if something that was unforeseen or unplanned comes along the way by way of a large hearing, a large legislative change, something of that nature. Thank you very much.